He was just walking home. No record, no weapon, no clue that his skin color was about to become a crime. But what if I told you the real criminal was a white federal agent, an FBI insider who thought his badge made him untouchable? This is not just a story about race. It's a story about power and what happens when a system built to protect is used to destroy. One black man, one FBI agent, one truth that refused to stay buried. You think you know how justice works? Watch to the end and ask yourself, what would have happened if he hadn't fought back?
The summer sun blazed over Washington, D.C., casting sharp shadows across the pavement of North Holloway Street. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, the kind of day when even the breeze felt like it had given up. The neighborhood of Brightmoor was bustling as usual, baristas yelling names, taxis honking, kids darting through water hydrants. But one sound pierced through the ordinary, a scream. Detective Jackson Miles was already at the scene when the squad cars arrived. He was wearing his standard dark blue FBI blazer, badge glinting on his chest, jaw set like stone. A crowd had gathered outside the Everwatch Jewelry Emporium. Inside, a man lay face down, blood pooling around his temple. Glass littered the ground like crushed diamonds. Jackson raised a hand to shield his eyes and turned to the officers. "Surveillance?" "Nothing from the front street," Officer Riley replied, checking his radio. Cameras were disabled. Only one outside corner pole cam, facing south. Jackson's face darkened. "Pull it now." The dead man was Terrence Hargrove, the store's owner and a former diplomat. According to the clerk, who was too shocked to speak in full sentences, he had been shot by a tall man in a hoodie, who fled moments before the scream. No one got a clear look at his face. The only clear witness was an elderly woman named Dolores Finch, who claimed it was a black man. "Big fella. Ran like the devil himself was chasing him." At 4:12 p.m., the pollcam footage came in. The grainy black and white image showed a man jogging past the store seconds after the shooting. He matched the vague description: African American, tall, wearing a dark hoodie. His name, as later confirmed by facial recognition, was Elijah Kane. Elijah had no criminal record. He was a 29-year-old mechanical engineer working at the Brightmoor Metro Transit. He had been on his way to pick up his niece from ballet class. But to the FBI, it looked convenient. Too convenient. Jackson watched the footage in the Bureau's war room. Behind him stood his partner, Special Agent Lila Moreno, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. "That's not enough to charge," she muttered. Jackson's expression didn't change. "It's a start." What Lila didn't know, what no one knew, was that Jackson had been in that jewelry store just 30 minutes before the murder. He had been meeting with Hargrove under the radar, trading government files for a private stash of black market diamonds. It had all gone wrong. An argument had turned into panic. And Jackson had pulled the trigger. Now, Elijah Kane was the perfect distraction. A man who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. By the next morning, Elijah had been arrested at his home in Anacostia. His mother screamed as agents pushed through the door. "He didn't do anything. He was with me at 4 p.m. Check the cameras." Jackson signed off on the arrest affidavit, stating that Elijah was seen fleeing the scene, matched witness descriptions, and had a possible motive: theft. None of it was solid. But it was enough for a judge to approve holding him for 72 hours. Elijah sat in the interrogation room, wrists cuffed to the table, sweat beading on his forehead. Across from him, Jackson leaned forward. "You ran," Jackson said calmly. "You were there." "I was running because I got a call that my niece's school let out early," Elijah replied. "I didn't hear no gunshots. I didn't see anything. Your story doesn't match the timeline." Elijah stared at him, eyes narrowing. "Neither does yours." Jackson's lips thinned. That wasn't a guess. That was a spark. Elijah knew something. Maybe he'd seen Jackson exiting the alley behind the store. Maybe he'd noticed the blood on his sleeve. Jackson stood up. "You'll be held until further notice." "Am I being charged?" Not yet. Outside the room, Lila was waiting. She watched Jackson carefully. Something's off with this. I've been looking into Kane. College scholarships, community work, spotless record. Doesn't feel right. Jackson shrugged. Even saints break. But doubt was blooming like mold in Lila's mind. Meanwhile, Elijah's younger sister, Nia, was already posting footage from a security camera outside their home, timestamped at 3:35 p.m. It showed Elijah walking out the front door. At 3:39, his phone GPS showed him waiting at a crosswalk. At 3:46, he was passing the Everwatch store. The murder had happened at 3:47. Too tight a timeline for guilt. But Jackson had already sealed the case file, slowing down discovery to the defense. Elijah's public defender, a green lawyer named Max Hanley, was overwhelmed. But Nia reached out to a freelance investigative journalist, Tori Westbrook, known for her work uncovering government misconduct. Tori agreed to meet. "What's your brother like?" Tori asked over coffee at the Iron Bean Cafe. Nia didn't hesitate. "The kind of man who walks old ladies across the street and fixes their light bulbs for free. He wouldn't even jaywalk." Tori looked over the footage and the affidavit. "This smells wrong. I'll dig." Meanwhile, Jackson's world was starting to unravel. Hargrove's files had vanished before the FBI could search the store. The bullet casing had no fingerprints. And one of the clerk's statements had changed. She now remembered hearing arguing before the shot 2 male voices. One white. One black. Elijah had only been passing by. But Jackson had been inside. Back at the bureau, Lila found inconsistencies in the timestamp of the surveillance footage. It had been altered by someone with bureau access. She stared at the screen for a long moment before whispering, "No." The shadows were beginning to shift. And they were closing in on Jackson Miles. By Friday morning, the story had begun to leak into the local press. "Elijah Kane arrested in connection to jewelry store homicide," read the headlines. The photo attached was a blurry one, Elijah in cuffs, eyes wide with disbelief. But as the city drank its coffee and skimmed the news, something subtle shifted in the public's perception. Elijah didn't look like a killer. He looked like a man caught in a story far bigger than him. In the FBI field office, Lila Moreno sat in her car long after her shift had ended. She kept replaying the timestamp discrepancy she'd discovered the night before. The surveillance footage Jackson had presented as evidence was clipped oddly, seconds missing, timecode inconsistent. She hadn't confronted him yet, but the seed of doubt had grown into something rooted and urgent. Finally, she unlocked her encrypted laptop and started her own side file, labeling it Project Meridian, Internal Investigation, Agent Jackson Miles. Meanwhile, at the DC detention center, Elijah sat on the cold steel bench in his holding cell, trying not to break. But doubt was cruel company. It replayed every second of that day. The crosswalk. The music in his earbuds. The old man outside the store he nodded to. Was anyone else watching? Had anyone else seen him not enter that building? Max Hanley, the young public defender, paced outside the cell block. He had barely 2 years of courtroom experience, and this case was already stretching him past the breaking point. But Nia Kane had come in every day, eyes blazing with conviction. Her voice had sharpened his spine. "You're not just defending my brother," she'd told him. "You're defending every innocent man who looks like him." On Sunday, Tori Westbrook published her first piece. Too fast to be guilty? The curious arrest of Elijah Kane. It featured a full GPS timeline from Elijah's phone, a comparison of city surveillance timestamps, and a breakdown of the route from his house to the store. It concluded, given the recorded timeframes, it is virtually impossible for Elijah Kane to have committed this crime. The story went viral by Monday. Jackson Miles sat at his desk in the FBI's Secure Evidence Processing Unit, staring at his screen. His email inbox was overflowing with internal questions, requests to verify timestamps, to explain chain of evidence gaps, to clarify missing body cam logs. Lila's name appeared again and again in the sender lines. She was digging. He walked the hall with a calm mask, but the pressure was building behind his eyes. In his jacket pocket was a USB drive containing the only unaltered footage from the poll cam. It showed him, not Elijah, exiting the alley moments after the gunshot. He hadn't meant to kill Hargrove. The man had threatened to expose their side deal, and in a moment of panic, Jackson had pulled the gun. There had been no time to clean up. So when Elijah passed by seconds later, Jackson saw salvation in the man's innocent face. And now, that salvation was unraveling. In the prison visitation room, Elijah sat across from his sister and Tori. "You need to remember everything," Tori said. "Even the stuff you think doesn't matter." "I already told you." "Tell me again," she interrupted. "Step by step. From the moment you left your house." Elijah sighed but began. "I left the house at 3:35. My niece's ballet school called early dismissal because the AC broke. I put my phone in my back pocket, plugged in my earbuds, and walked down Blythe Avenue." "Anyone see you?" "I waved to Mr. Chandler, he was watering his garden. Then I passed the alley next to Everwatch, but I didn't stop. My playlist switched tracks, and I looked at my phone, 3:46. Then I heard sirens. I didn't think anything of it." Tori leaned forward. "Wait. You passed the alley?" "Yeah. There was someone standing in it. I thought it was a city worker." "You saw their face?" "Not clearly. But they were white. Short hair. Wearing a blazer." Tori exchanged a glance with Nia. Elijah hadn't realized what he'd said. But they had. Later that evening, Tori called Lila Moreno from her burner phone. "I have a witness who saw a white male in a blazer exiting the alley seconds after the shooting." "Is he willing to say that publicly?" "He doesn't even realize what he saw. But if you're looking into Jackson Miles, this could be your break." Lila didn't answer right away. She was sitting alone in the evidence archive room, staring at a bullet casing that had mysteriously been sealed before it could be tested for prints. She had seen Jackson's signature on the log sheet. She had pretended not to notice. But the wall of silence she had once trusted was now crumbling. "I need that footage," Lila finally said. "The original poll cam video." "Can you get it?" Tori smiled. "Already working on it." By Tuesday, social media was ablaze. #FreeElijah trended nationwide. The city's district attorney's office received over 10,000 calls demanding the charges be dropped. But without concrete evidence of tampering, Elijah remained behind bars. Until a break came from an unexpected place. Lila received a call from Anthony Ruzek, an old IT technician from the Bureau's legacy archives. He had found an unregistered access log. Someone had copied footage from the Pollcam footage server and renamed it. The original file timestamp matched Jackson's known time in the area. He emailed her the footage. Lila watched it in the dim light of her apartment. There, pixelated but clear enough, was Jackson Miles exiting the alley. Moments later, Elijah passed by on the street. Everything came into focus. Lila didn't sleep that night. The dawn in Washington, D.C. arrived red and heavy, as if the sky itself had sensed that justice had been delayed too long. Special Agent Lila Moreno stood at the window of her 8th-floor apartment, staring down at the city she had sworn to protect. In her hand was a flash drive. The truth. The unedited surveillance footage showed her partner, Jackson Miles, stepping out of the alley behind Everwatch Jewelry Emporium seconds before Elijah Kane walked by. For the first time in her career, Lila felt paralyzed. Reporting a fellow agent, especially someone like Jackson, decorated, respected, and politically protected, was like lighting a match in a room filled with gas. She paced. Then, she made a call. "Tori? It's Lila. I have the footage." Tori Westbrook answered from her small newsroom office in Columbia Heights, coffee-stained papers strewn across her desk. Her voice sharpened. "Send it now. I'll prep the article." "No. Not yet. I need time. If I go public before I notify Internal Affairs, they'll crush this story as leaked classified evidence. I have to do it by the book. Or we risk losing everything. Tori hesitated. You trust them? I don't. But I trust the law. They hung up. Lila drove to the Bureau's Internal Affairs Division at Quantico. She checked in under a pseudonym, walked down 3 flights, and handed the drive to a lead investigator named Marcellus Graves, an old-school, meticulous officer with a reputation for being incorruptible. He watched the footage in silence. When it ended, he leaned back, sighing deeply. This is going to burn. Jackson's signature is all over the evidence logs, Lila added. He bypassed protocol. It exonerating footage. And we have a material witness, Elijah Kane, who can testify he saw a white man exiting the alley at the exact moment. Graves tapped the flash drive. This is enough to trigger a full review. I'll begin immediately. As Lila left Quantico, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. You really think you can win this? Jackson Miles' voice was calm, steady, even warm. I always respected you, Lila. Don't throw away your career chasing ghosts. You were in the alley. You don't have proof. I do. He paused. Then I'll see you in the dark, Agent Moreno. Click. That night, Jackson cleaned out his personal locker at the Bureau. He didn't run. He didn't panic. Instead, he went home to his quiet apartment in Foggy Bottom, poured a glass of scotch, and sat by the window. He had always known this moment might come. Across town, Elijah Kane's case shifted. Max Hanley received an official notice, new evidence submitted pending emergency review hearing. For the first time in weeks, Elijah felt a glimmer of hope. Don't celebrate yet, Max said. The system takes time. I've been in this cell longer than the guy who killed someone, Elijah muttered. Time's not on my side. Outside the courthouse, the protest had grown. Over 200 people stood with signs. Justice for Elijah. Stop weaponizing the badge. We are not your scapegoats. Inside, Judge Helena Prescott reviewed the flash drive in silence. She was known for her precision and zero tolerance for judicial theatrics. When the footage finished, she called for a recess. The courtroom buzzed. Reporters scrambled. Jackson Miles had just become the central name in a spiraling scandal. In a last-ditch effort, Jackson tried to control the narrative. He reached out to a major news outlet, hoping to frame it all as a misunderstanding. But the journalist Emery Knox already had Tori's scoop and refused to play puppet. Let me be clear, Emery said. You're not the hero in this story, Agent Miles. You're the villain trying to wear the hero's coat. That evening, Tori released her bombshell. Exclusive, FBI agent framed innocent man in jewelry store murder, new evidence reveals truth. It was backed by surveillance footage, document logs, and testimonies. Within hours, it reached 1.2 million views. By morning, Internal Affairs had issued a formal warrant for Jackson's arrest. But he was already gone. Lila stood beside Elijah and Max in court as Judge Prescott cleared her throat. Mr. Elijah Kane, in light of newly presented evidence, this court finds no basis to hold you. You are released, and your record is to be expunged immediately. Elijah didn't move. Max whispered, You're free. Elijah looked at the people behind the glass, his mother crying, Nia clapping, protesters cheering, and slowly stood. He nodded to the judge, then to Lila, who gave a slight, exhausted smile. As they walked outside, the crowd erupted. Reporters swarmed. Nia hugged her brother so tightly, he laughed for the first time in weeks. In a corner, unnoticed, Tori filmed it all. Then she turned and whispered to her cameraman. Now we find Jackson. 2 days later, his car was found abandoned at an old marina in Chesapeake Bay. Inside were his badge, his gun, and a single handwritten note. I did what I thought I had to. That's the job, right? But Jackson was nowhere to be found. The manhunt had begun. The Chesapeake Bay glittered beneath the overcast sky, but the water held no answers. federal agents combed through the marina where Jackson Miles had vanished. His SUV had been found with the keys still in the ignition, the gas tank nearly full, and no sign of forced entry or struggle. The nearby security cameras? Disabled. Classic Jackson. He hadn't disappeared, he had erased himself. Lila Moreno stood at the dock in a rain jacket, her eyes scanning the horizon. Even after everything, part of her didn't want to believe he'd run. But the truth was plain, Jackson Miles had turned fugitive. Agent Marcellus Graves stood beside her, flipping through a dossier. "We have a bolo across 12 states. TSA flagged his passport, but no flight records. No credit cards used. No calls." "He's smarter than this," Lila muttered. "He's playing us. Then we better learn the rules." Meanwhile, Elijah Kane tried to piece his life back together. His release had sparked nationwide conversation. Cable networks invited him to speak. Civil rights organizations offered him platforms. But Elijah didn't want fame. He wanted peace. He returned to his job at Metro Transit, but the stares followed him. Some co-workers welcomed him with warm embraces. Others avoided eye contact. The shadow of false accusation didn't disappear overnight. At home, he found himself checking the locks 3 times before bed. The trauma wasn't over. And deep down, he feared that Jackson wasn't finished either. Across the city, Tori Westbrook was building her next piece. The system behind the badge, how a cover-up nearly cost an innocent man his life. She dug into Jackson's case history, closed files, overlooked reports, suspects coerced into confessions. A pattern emerged. He had made others disappear, just not literally. Evidence misplaced. Motives invented. Witnesses pressured. In one case, a young Hispanic man named Luis Renteria had been charged in a gas station robbery despite video showing he was across town. Jackson had been the lead investigator. The similarities were eerie. Tori met with Luis, who now worked as a mechanic in Baltimore. "You saying the guy who tried to bury me is now on the run?" he asked, eyes wide. "I always knew something was off with him. He looked at me like I was already guilty." Back at FBI headquarters, Lila accessed Jackson's archived case files. She pulled 22 cases closed by Jackson between 2016 and 2022. Within hours, she'd identified 5 with questionable evidence trails. The man hadn't just snapped. He'd been covering cracks for years. But the real twist came from a voice Lila didn't expect to hear again. "Agent Moreno," a gruff voice said through her phone one night. "This is Horace DuPont. I used to work organized crime with Jackson. I think you need to hear something." They met at a diner in Alexandria. DuPont was retired now, gray hair, limp in his left leg from a bullet wound in 19, but his eyes were sharp. "Jackson once told me something back in 2021, DuPont said over a cup of black coffee. "We were drinking, half off duty. He said, if the law ever turned on me, I'd become what I hunted. I thought it was just bravado." "Meaning what?" "Meaning he won't hide forever. He'll come back. Not to clear his name, but to settle scores." Lila felt the chill before she even finished her coffee. 2 days later, a break. A black SUV was spotted on a wildlife camera in Shenandoah National Park. Park rangers found tire tracks, boot prints, and an old ranger cabin with signs of recent use. Inside, protein bars, water jugs, a burner phone, and a notebook filled with handwritten names. Lila read the list. Elijah Kane, Lila Moreno, Tori Westbrook, Marcellus Graves, Judge Prescott, Amory Knox. He was planning something. The manhunt was upgraded to Priority 1. Meanwhile, Elijah was relocated to a secure safe house. He protested, but Lila didn't give him a choice. "You don't understand," she told him. "He's not gone. He's focused." At the safe house, Elijah sat with Tori one night, restless. "Do you think he'll really come after me?" he asked. Tori didn't lie. "He nearly destroyed you once. And you're the proof he failed. He was the law, Elijah whispered. And I trusted the law. Then help us build something better. Expose all of it. The next day, Elijah gave a live interview on national TV. No scripts. No media coaching. I was profiled. Lied about. Locked up for something I didn't do. But I'm not just a survivor. I'm a witness. And I'm not staying silent. The segment exploded online. And across state lines, in a cabin far from civilization, Jackson Miles watched it from a cracked phone screen. His eyes didn't blink. His voice, soft as dust, whispered. Game on. 3 weeks passed. The nation watched as the headlines shifted from outrage to obsession. Jackson Miles, former FBI special agent, was now the most wanted man in America. He wasn't just a rogue agent, he was a living scar on the face of American law enforcement. And he knew it. Somewhere in the Blue Ridge Mountains, in an abandoned firewatch station, Jackson paced in silence. The cabin had no electricity, no running water, but it had what he needed: space, privacy, and time. The notebook he kept beside his cot was filled now: strategies, threats, routines, weaknesses. But one page stood out. It was titled, The Ones Who Turned. At the top of that list, Lila Moreno. He respected her once. Maybe even trusted her. But she had broken the brotherhood. She hadn't just exposed him, she'd betrayed the order that protected them all. And for that, Jackson had no forgiveness. In D.C., Lila was under federal protection, but she refused to hide. I'm not going to let him make me afraid of doing my job, she told Graves. If I disappear, he wins. Graves shook his head. This isn't about pride. It's about staying alive. I'm not his victim, she said. And I'm not letting Elijah Kane be his target again. Elijah, still in a secure apartment under FBI surveillance, was battling ghosts of his own. He slept only a few hours each night, waking at every noise. He kept the curtains shut, even during the day. The world had turned him into a symbol, but it hadn't asked how much it cost him. Tori Westbrook noticed the shift in him. You're scared, she said one evening. I'm not scared of him, Elijah said. I'm scared of becoming like him, always looking over my shoulder. Tori set down her pen. You won't. Because you're telling the truth. And the truth has weight. Elijah looked out the window. He'll come for me. I can feel it. Tori didn't argue. She could feel it too. 2 days later, that feeling became real. At 2:16 a.m., an FBI black SUV exploded outside the Eastern District Field Office. No fatalities, but the message was clear. Jackson Miles had returned to D.C. A handwritten note was taped to a nearby signpost. You judged me. Now I judge you. By sunrise, the Capitol was locked down. Federal buildings went into red alert. Graves ordered a full protection protocol for Lila, Elijah, and Tori. Surveillance drones patrolled above key safehouses. But Jackson had always been 3 steps ahead. He didn't want to kill them in the dark. He wanted an audience. That evening, he hijacked a public livestream feed from a community justice forum that Tori was moderating. His face appeared on screen for 28 seconds before the signal was cut. In that time, he said, you thought you found the truth. But the truth is what I make of it. You want a trial? I'll give you one. The public went into a frenzy. Media spun conspiracy theories. Commentators clashed on live television. Was he a villain? A martyr? A product of a broken system? But Lila knew what he was. A hunter, she told Graves. And this is the final chase. They set a trap. Using encrypted messages disguised as news tips, the FBI baited a false meeting between Tori, Lila, and Elijah live-streamed under the guise of a truth and reconciliation broadcast. The hope, Jackson wouldn't resist showing up. What they didn't know was that he was already there. Hidden inside the ventilation system of the media building, Jackson had slipped in hours earlier. He had studied the floor plan for days. He knew the patrol rotations. He knew the camera blind spots. And he had one goal: make them pay. But something went wrong. At 9:42 p.m., as Elijah stepped into the studio, he looked up at the catwalk above the set. A glint of movement, a shadow slipping along the edge. Elijah didn't hesitate. "He's here," he shouted. Chaos erupted. FBI agents swarmed the set. Lila drew her sidearm, yelling commands. Tori dove under the news desk. The lights went black. Then a shot rang out, followed by silence. When the emergency power kicked in, Jackson was gone. But this time, he left blood behind. A single drop. On the guardrail. DNA confirmed it was his. "He's wounded," Graves said. "We've got him." By morning, the perimeter across D.C. tightened. High-speed facial recognition scanned every traffic feed. Military-grade tracking software was deployed. No more mistakes. Lila, still in tactical gear, leaned against a wall and closed her eyes. "He's desperate now. He'll strike again." "Elijah?" Graves asked. "Keep him guarded. But doubled the security on Tori." "Why?" "Because Jackson doesn't care about exposure anymore. He cares about the story." And sure enough, later that day, Tori received a package. No return address. Inside, a black USB drive, labeled in marker. Final chapter. She plugged it into an isolated laptop under FBI watch. The video opened with Jackson's face dirty, bloody, eyes hollow. "You wanted justice. But justice is just revenge with a badge. I've been your villain. But I was made by this system. And if I go down, I'll take it with me. One way or another." He ended the recording with coordinates. A park. 1 block from where it all began. The sun was just starting to rise when FBI teams surrounded McPherson Square Park, the place Jackson had chosen for his final act. The wide green lawn, usually dotted with early joggers and coffee drinkers, was now cordoned off with yellow tape and steel barricades. Snipers took position on rooftops. Helicopters hovered like vultures. Command vans hummed with satellite links and heat-mapping radar. And in the center of the empty park stood an old wooden bench, facing the statue of General McPherson. On the bench was a package taped shut, wrapped in black cloth. Agent Marcellus Graves approached carefully, flanked by the bomb squad. The package was scanned, x-rayed, then opened. Inside, a .40 caliber FBI-issued pistol. A worn copy of the Federalist Papers. A burner phone. And a note. "I don't run. I reset." Suddenly, the burner phone rang. Graves answered. "This is Graves." Jackson's voice came through, low and calm. "Hello, Agent. Lovely morning. You brought the whole army for little old me. You're surrounded. No more games, Jackson. You don't walk out of this one. I don't plan to. We can end this peacefully. Come in alive. You think I want peace?" Jackson laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You still don't get it. I've already won." Then, the line went dead. Moments later, motion was detected inside the National Archives building, just 2 blocks away. A figure dressed in black slipped past infrared sensors, heading toward the central hall. Lila Moreno got the alert mid-coffee sip. She dropped her cup, grabbed her sidearm, and sprinted. "I know where he's going," she shouted into her combs. "It's not the park, it was never the park." Elijah Kane, watching from his safehouse screen, leaned forward. "He's going to rewrite the narrative," he said to no one. Tori, beside him, whispered, "or destroy it." Inside the National Archives, Jackson moved with calculated ease. He passed glass cases, ancient parchment, and security cameras already disabled. He wasn't here to steal anything. He was here for symbolism. He wanted his last stand to take place where the story of America was written, where power was born. He stood beneath the rotunda, staring up at the faded Constitution under glass. The sound of boots echoed in the hall behind him. Lila entered, gun raised. "Don't!" He turned, smiling faintly. "Thought it would be you. You're done, Jackson. It's over. It was over the moment you chose them over me. You don't get to pretend you're clean. We were both raised in the same machine. You crossed the line." He stepped toward her, arms slightly raised. "I crossed it a long time ago. You just never looked down." Behind her, Graves and tactical teams fanned out, surrounding him. Lila's voice cracked. "Drop to your knees." Jackson looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly reached into his coat. "Gun," someone yelled. A single shot rang out. Lila fired. Jackson stumbled back, clutching his chest. Blood bloomed across his shirt. He dropped to his knees, then slumped to the floor. It was over. 3 weeks later. The storm had passed, but its wake reshaped everything. Elijah Kane filed a civil suit against the Bureau, the city, and multiple agents. His case triggered a national review of wrongful prosecutions and inspired the creation of the Elijah Act, a bill requiring independent review panels for all federal investigations involving force or race-based profiling. Lila Moreno testified before Congress, exposing not only Jackson's crimes, but the institutional silence that allowed him to thrive. Her courage made her both a hero and a target. She was offered a promotion but turned it down. "I'm not done cleaning," she said. Instead, she took a role leading a newly formed Office of Accountability and Ethics, aimed at rooting out systemic abuse within federal agencies. Tori Westbrook's documentary, The Shadows We Cast, debuted on national television and became a rallying cry for reform. She declined book deals and fame, choosing instead to create a nonprofit that trains young journalists in ethical investigative reporting. And Jackson Miles? He died with no honors, no memorial, no folded flag. His legacy wasn't erased, but rewritten. His name now appeared in training manuals as a warning, not a role model. But even in death, his shadow lingered. In one of the last scenes of Tori's documentary, Elijah sits in front of the camera. "When I was walking down that street, I didn't know my life was about to be torn apart. I didn't know a man with a badge had decided I was guilty before I even opened my mouth. But I survived. And I speak now not because I want revenge, but because I want justice to mean something real." He looked directly into the lens. To anyone listening, you don't need a badge to tell the truth. You just need to refuse to be silent. Final epilogue. A year later, a mural appeared in Southeast D.C. Painted across a brick wall were the faces of those who had fought back not with violence, but with courage. In the center, Elijah Kane. Beneath it, a quote. "Truth is louder than power. But only if someone dares to speak it." The city walked past that wall every day, reminded not just of a man who almost lost everything, but of a system that must never again turn away from its reflection. And somewhere, far from the cameras, Lila Moreno sat at her desk. Still watching. Still listening. Still fighting.